Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Pastor Godfrey. I appreciate the kind info. It's great to be with you and this growing flock of believers at this beautiful church. How many of you were here when Pastor Godfrey introduced me a quarter century ago? Okay, so here's a question now. How come none of the women have aged, but all the rest of you guys look like you were with Moses at 120 standing on top of Mount Nebo looking into the promised land? Yeah. You know, I tell you, the great privilege I have this evening of being with one of my dearest friends, a fellow Marine, Tim Lee, a modern-day Joshua. That's who Moses was standing next to. Interestingly enough, Joshua is the title of the next chapter in the good book of right after they bury Moses at age 120 after all of his experiences. Tim is my Joshua, and he and I have been to many places together. But my favorite is being with him in the place Moses didn't get to go, the promised land. We've got a picture, I think. No? Yeah, there it is. There it is. That's the tomb. And I'm not Moses, and he's not really Joshua, but we've left our footprints, and I'm sorry, you don't leave footprints anymore. We followed each other through the Holy Land. My foundation leads groups out there every other year, thereabouts. And we do that because from the capital of Jerusalem, we now know where that is, thanks to our president. So from Jerusalem, all prayers are local calls. So we've issued a lot of them over there. I've been there over 30 times. Every time I go, I learn a lot. I encourage you all, if you've not made one before, do that once, at least once in your lifetime, because it's a magnificent experience. My faith is reinforced not only by being in great churches like this, but I'm reassured that I'm right when people say to me, "Do you know where you're going?" Yeah, I know where I'm going. It's not because I have a GPS. It's because I know where I'm going, and I just don't know when. I know why. Okay? So just to show of hands here, how many of you have already voted? Yeah. Let's do it the other way. How many of you not yet voted? Good. Don't forget. Okay? No, I'm very serious. I told the pastor when he and I were talking about, because we were supposed to do this earlier and then things got all screwed up with the weather and things like that. And I said, I want to make this work because I'm looking for people who care about my 18 grandkids. Okay? That's my focus in life at this point, is being what's going to make for an opportunity for them. And so I ask all the time for people to pray for my grandkids and pray for their future and pray for the leaders that we need in this country to guarantee them that kind of a future and not have it stolen from them. So I'm trying not to be political. I'm trying not to. Here's another show of hands question. How many of you have ever said the question, when something happens to you, why me? Huh? Or how many of you have ever said, why not me? When somebody else gets promoted and you don't. Well, I asked the question, why me, this morning when I was going through the airport, and the TSA people pulled me over, and the guy says, I need to pat you down. I've got metal all over my body, so, some of it little tiny pieces, some of it in big knee and hips and backs and things like that from being hurt a few times. And so as he's patting me down, I says, why me? He says, because it's random. I said, well, random, how are you? I'm Oliver. It's not even a crack of a smile, but he knew who I was because the next question was, what are you going to Florida for? Because he's looking at my boarding pass. You go down there to talk politics. I said, no, I'm going to go down and talk about, I know the outcome of the election for me. You see, I know what the outcome is for me. And I don't know what the outcome is going to be for everybody else, but I do know where I'm going and why I'm going there. And we're going to get to that here. So I'm going to go down and talk about things that are really important, like that question, why me and why not me? And even those of you who have already voted, the rest of this is still relevant. So I look at what's going on in the world today and I say to myself, have we ever seen a challenge like this? And the answer is yes. And other nations have as well. And other people have as well. And some of them weathered the storm and some of them didn't. And so I can tell you the answer to the question of why not me? On the 28th of July, 1969, nearly everyone around me was either killed or terribly wounded. It happened in literally less than 5 minutes. I was grievously hurt, but not enough to take me out of the fight. And I look back on those moments and I say to myself, what could I have done different? Don't play the game of shoulda, woulda, coulda. What could I have done different? And I came up with an answer for that. And the answer was my listening post was in the wrong place. The company commander was killed and some great staff NCOs and lieutenant and the corpsman saved more lives that night than he'd ever seen possible before. So I ask you the question in a kind of a strange way, why not me? The other night when I was coming home from a late event that I'd promised the president I would do, and I did, and I'm coming home really late at night and the rain is coming down like crazy, and right in front of me, a guy T-bones the car through an intersection. Why not me? I mean, no one died in that terrible crash, but there were people very, very seriously hurt. And it took forever to get the wreckage cleared out of the road, so I got to watch it all. It literally happened right in front of me. Why not me? Well, the answer to that is, I know where I'm going. I know why I'm going there. I just don't know when. And I could have been in that car if I'd just been a seconds different in timing. And a drunken young guy came through and T-boned the car and just busted people up terrible. And I look at that, so I want to ask you this. Have you considered what would happen to me, to my immortal soul, if on the way home, God forbid, from this event, you got T-boned and died? What would happen to your soul? I know what would happen to mine. Do you know for sure what's going to happen to yours? Now, it's not because I work hard. It's not because of all the medals. It's not because being, I think, a decent husband and a great dad and a wonderful grandfather. It's because my Lord and Savior is known to me, and better still, I'm known to him. Okay? Now, all of that happened in my life at the age of 35. Until then, I thought I was God's gift to the Marine Corps. People used to write that on my fitness reports, and people would promote me early to different things and give me assignments to things that seemed impossible. Some of them were, 1980s. But my mission, now Marines always need a mission, is to show, not just talk about, show my 18 grandkids how to make the same decision, because that's all it takes, is a decision in your heart, right? So here it is. Here's what we use. These are the tools we use in the North Clan, 28 of us. Tradition, relationships, situational awareness, servant leadership, and the word commitment. Now let me just talk very quickly about each one of them because it's important. Those of you who raised your hands, you haven't voted yet? Commitment. Remember that song, Zero Mostel and Fiddler on the Roof, traditions, right? So for us, traditions are like glue. It's a common set of memories and shared activities, and here's some of them. Every time we have a meal, no matter whether it's two of us together like Betsy and me, or whether it's all of us like it was last night at our house, birthday party, 28 human beings, birthday, big cake. Big cake. If it were up to me, we would have one birthday every year. It'd be the 5th of July. That's his birthday, right? It'd be the 5th of July. Everybody gets one present, and that's it. It's done for the year. No. We have 2 a month. Some months 3. We gather around. We say a prayer. It doesn't matter where we are. Could be a restaurant. Could be ice cream. Could be breakfast, lunch, dinner. We pray together, holding hands. On Sundays, we all go to church. When our entire tribe is home for holidays like Easter and Christmas, we fill up 4 pews of my son-in-law's church. It's just great. When every grandchild is born, Betsy goes there and somehow knows to be there when it actually happens. So when Elijah Judd, that is his name, Elijah Judd Tochterman, our most recent number 18, maybe the last, I don't know. 2 baseball teams, is that enough? When Elijah Judd was born, Betsy went down the day before, even though it was 3 weeks before the baby is due, and she was there. I arrived the next day, because I was out of town. I arrive the next day, and I walk into the hospital, and even before COVID, you had to put on the blue gloves and the blue bonnet and the blue skirt and boot, all that stuff. And I walk in, my daughter's sound asleep in the bed, the baby's 3 weeks early, so the baby, Elijah Judd, not named yet, is in this space capsule beside her bed. My wife is asleep there, and Dornan's husband is asleep on the couch. And the nurse says, "Colonel, would you like to get a picture with the baby?" "Yes." So I pick up the baby, wires, tubes, hoses, stuff coming out of the baby. And she takes the picture with my phone, and the flash goes off. And at that point, my daughter sits bolt upright in bed as the nurse says, "Congratulations, Colonel." And my daughter says, "What are you congratulating him for? He didn't carry this baby for 8 months. I did. He didn't have a darn thing to do with it." The nurse says, "Set the baby down and step out of the room." That's part of the tradition. I missed all of ours, yeah. So here's another one. Okay, on every 14th birthday, we give the kid a box, and it's the only present I'm allowed to give. And this has a lot to do with those of us who care about the Second Amendment. Listen carefully. Okay, so it's a long box. And the label on the box says, if you learn to use everything in this box, you'll never go hungry, you'll never be lost, and you need fear nothing, and I will show you how to get there. They open the box. The first thing they find inside the box is one of these, right? It's a Marine Bible. It says Marine Bible right there. Barely see it anymore. And I say, and the next thing underneath is a map sheet of Betsy's farm. I married the farm 52 years ago. Sometimes seems like more. A map sheet and a lensatic compass. And it just happens to have set out on the farm at various terrain features, an ammo can welded to a stake and a number in it and a note inside it. And I'll teach you how to land navigate. Map and a compass, never be lost, right? And the last thing, of course, they see in the box is a Model 12 20-gauge shotgun. It's, right? Or a Remington. Model 12s are hard to find nowadays. And the first thing they want to use is what? The shotgun. No, here's the way it works, guys. The first thing you're going to do is give me a book report on this book, and it just happens that there are 31 Proverbs and 31 days in 7 of the 12 months a year. So you'll start, today is the first, right? Second. Today's the second. So start on 2. When you get back to 31, come give me a book report. Just read one a day. You'll know which day it is based on the calendar. And when you get all done with 31 of them, bring them back and I'll give a book report. Then I'll show you how to use the map and the compass. That usually takes a few weeks. And finally, we get to the point where Granddad's going to take them out. First thing you do is I'll learn to teach you how to take it apart and put it back together again, blindfolded. Right? Then I show you how to use it safely, and then we'll take it out and bust some clays. And all that takes several months a year, every year. But it's a wonderful time to give me an opportunity to be with them. I want to come back to Proverbs 31 in a minute. Second of all, I said the second most important thing is relationships. Okay? Here's the bottom line. The company we keep will define who we are. Never forget that. I tell that to the kids from the time that they're going off to school. The folks you hang around with will define who you are, who you become, what you are. I'm now over 3/4 of a century old. There's no doubt that the relationships I have with my Marines is unique on the planet Earth. It's different than the relationship I've had with my trophy wife of now almost 53 years. I never thought, she's never heard me say this, so don't broadcast this. Where's the camera? Cut it. When I was 25, I never thought of sleeping with a grandmother. The relationship I have with my grandkids, some of you got that a little late, by the way. Look at the most important relationship that I have is the one with my Savior, Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And it's all because of a role model leader who led me to that relationship. It's the most important relationship I have. And that's what I want my kids to understand and my grandkids to understand. That's why I can say I know where I'm going and why I'm going there. I just don't know when. It's not because I can read a map. By the way, just a little tip. If you've not read Proverbs 31, break it open when you go home. And men, listen, when she's brushing the teeth in the bathroom, okay, read, when she comes back out and climbs into bed, read her those last 10 verses of Proverbs 31. Because I tell my grandkids, your grandmother is my Proverbs 31 wife. Okay? And they've now looked it up. They've now gone, because some of the older boys think it's all about sex. But it is how I ended up with 4 kids and 18 grandkids. It works. It works. I tell her all the time, she's my Proverbs 31 wife, and she still is. Didn't expect marriage counseling tonight, did you, Pastor? Huh? Back to my 5 points. Relationships are based on all kinds of factors, but one of them, most important, is situational awareness. Joshua had situational awareness as he's going into the promised land. My Joshua right here had situational awareness. It's not something found everywhere, but it's important because situational awareness is actually defined as knowing what's going on around you and having a plan to deal with it. And that whole idea, that concept is crucial. I sometimes lose out occasionally on figuring out why I'm in a certain place at a certain time when I'm looking at it in the aftermath. I will give you this. The situational awareness that you see on the battlefield is extraordinary. This is a 17-second clip taken. I made 66 embeds during this war, and it went on for 17 plus years. And this was one I never put on the air because I never wanted Betsy at home or the kids to see some of the news footage that I'd collected that was when I was with the targets of it. So watch what happens in this 17-second. I'm hoping that our AV experts have bleeped out some of the language in it. So go ahead. This Alpha 3 RPG.
RPG. Stop!
What happened there was the gunner that was in the turret. I'm sitting in the right front seat of the vehicle, okay? And the turret gunner yells RPG, RPG, because he had the situational awareness to see the guy raising the RPG to fire at us. And at that point, the driver puts it into reverse and moves the vehicle about a foot as far as it got before the RPG hit. If he'd stayed where he was, if he didn't have situational awareness, I probably wouldn't be here tonight because it would have hit us right in the front end of the vehicle. Probably killed everybody aboard. Now, I didn't put that on TV for a reason because I didn't want to have Betsy go, what? She's never seen that video. That's an example of military situational awareness. As I tell people, it is not a flower that grows in every garden. And I'll give you an example. When we're at a hotel, Betsy and I are staying we moved through the country, but the luxurious hotel we stay in Jerusalem, you have to take your own bags off the vehicles. This is a security measure for the Israelis. And we're standing in the lobby of the David Citadel Hotel. Tim and I have been there. And a tour bus comes in, and I can see the tour bus come in, and Betsy's looking at the elevator for another couple that's supposed to come down. We're going to go to dinner with some Israeli friends. And as she's looking up at the elevator, I see the tour bus, and I tap her on the shoulder. I said, tour bus just came in. Let's hope these folks come down quickly because it's all gringos and they're going to get, She said, how do you know? I said, because I have great situational awareness. Actually, I had seen, and she didn't see, the sign on the side of the bus that said Mike Huckabee Holy Land Tours. It's got to be full of gringos. First guy comes off the bus, walks right over to me, standing by the elevator, standing next to this beautiful lady looking at the elevator. He says, anybody ever tell you look a lot like Ollie North? I said, well, it's a good thing I look a lot like Ollie North because I'm sleeping with his wife. He turns to me and he says, you better watch yourself. He's a U.S. Marine. He'll kick your butt. And he walks away. And at that point, Ollie North's wife says, you didn't see that one coming, did you, Mr. Situational Awareness? No, I didn't. Look, bottom line of situational awareness, expect the unexpected and adapt accordingly. And the relationships that we have enhance our situational awareness because it gives us cues about somebody you want to protect. The turret gunner wanted to protect us, not just himself. And he yelled to warn the driver to put it in reverse. Fourth quality, leadership. Look at the best leaders are servant leaders. They are heroes, like my friend Joshua, Tim Lee, right? I've spent my life with heroes. My dad, all my uncles, and all my brothers served in combat. After 9/11, Fox sent me to keep company with tens of thousands of heroes. Listen, the finest military that the world has ever known, and it needs to stay that way. I'm not going to give a political lecture, but if we don't keep it that way, we're all in danger. You know, I say the word heroes to some groups of young people, and they think immediately, the guy that caught the pass in the end zone, the hero that just set a new record climbing a mountain, the hero that did something when he made a speech at a political, I heard this about another candidate. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah. The fact is, and some people even think when you say the word hero, spandex suit and a cape, you know, heroes. Classical definition of a hero is a person who puts him or herself at risk for the benefit of others. Hero, right there. I want to show you some heroes. This is about 2 minutes long. These are the heroes that I've been keeping company with for, it is literally now 19 years. And so, and plus growing up the whole time as the son of a hero. And this is what they look like in this day and age. And it's, anyway, these are all folks that, you can just give me a little bit of volume on that, just a little bit of the music underneath it. And these are some of the difficult things they do and the dangerous places they do them in. And they're soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, Marines. Average age of a youngster coming in the military today is 19 and a half to 20. He's a high school graduate at minimum, but most of them come with an average of 13 and a half years of education. More likely to be married than when I came in the Marine Corps at the age of 17. 29th of December, 1961. None of you women were old enough. Multiple deployments, some of them 7, 8, 9, 10. The enemies that they face are vicious. The operations that they undertake, like the one last Saturday night to rescue an American named Philip Walton in certain death in Nigeria, require extraordinary skill. They operate and maintain the most sophisticated weapons and equipment. They've been taught chemistry and physics and avionics, electronics. Machines like this get them in and out much faster than when I first came in the Marine Corps. They can use their weapons like their bodies. They can take a life or save one because those are remarkably well trained. Their responsibility and accountability rivals that of the CEO of any corporation in the world. For them, the expression, "I've got your back," isn't the slogan of a mattress company. They mean it. Most importantly, since 1973, every one of them has been a volunteer. In a moment, you're going to see the yellow lab. Here he is. That's Dexter. That's the best IED detector God ever made. We spent billions of dollars trying to do it. No one does it as well as Dexter. You're going to see Dexter again here in a second or two. Smitty, that's his dog handler, one of the bravest men I've ever met. I always followed Dexter and Smitty when I'm going out the back end of that helicopter because I know I'm not going to step on an IED. Those are the kind of people, and even in the recreation, that's combat baseball. It's a bamboo stick and a rock. If you're playing first base, you get to rearrange somebody's lower abdomen. Those are the kind of people with whom I've spent my life. And I learned from them that the only way you can lead is by example. The model of behavior you want from others, you have to show them. Servant leaders are the best ones. How'd you tie? Here you go. How did you learn to tie your shoes? Someone who loved you knelt down in front of you and showed you how to do it. What's the role model for that? John's gospel. In the upper room, just hours before he's about to be tortured to death, Jesus shows how to be humble. What's he do? He takes a towel, wraps around himself, and kneels down at their feet and washes their feet. That task, in some translations, it's a servant's task always, sometimes a slave. And Pete doesn't want to have it done. Pete says, "Oh, no, I don't." Pete, you get over here, and because if I don't show you how to do it, you won't know how to do it, because this is what you have to do. That's the true definition of a servant leader. And Jesus Christ is giving it to us just hours before the ultimate example of it on a cross. See, those are the kinds of things that I want my grandkids to understand. That's what real heroes do. That's what real leaders do. And that gospel is just striking when Tim and I have been in that place. It's the reconstruction of it. Because remember, Jerusalem is leveled in 70 AD. Jesus said it was going to happen, and it did. He's not only our Lord and Savior, he's a great prophet. He told them, here's what's going to happen. So they've reconstructed it, and probably somewhere where we stood there, and we told this story. Jen, you sit there and you say to yourself, oh, could that have happened here? Yeah. Yeah, and it did. May not be the exact right spot, but there. No real leader can ever ask others to do that which they will not or cannot do. Leaders have to persevere in adversity. Never ask, these are all instructions for my 18 grandkids. Never ask, why me? Never play shoulda, woulda, coulda. Shoulda, woulda, coulda is looking back and saying, oh, well, if only things that... No. Nobody wins the game of what might have been. I like to remind them when it's about the time when they're learning how to drive, that the size of the rearview mirror, and there's the windshield. Keep your eye focused on what's happening in front of you, not what's behind you. You've got to know it, but it's a smaller picture. All right, commitments, here we go. Satan's alive and well, by the way. Satan is alive and well and at work in our lives, in every opportunity. So I tell them, my 5 favorite words are, how can I help you, right? And you have to say it to people sometimes you don't want to say it to, and you have to mean it, because if they turn and say, well, here's how you can help me. Unfulfilled expectations are the greatest cause of anger on the planet Earth. You know where there's never any unfulfilled expectations? It's when you kneel in humility and you pray, God, forgive me for that which I did today that I shouldn't have done, and forgive me for not doing the things I should have done. Lord, bless my work that I can be a model for others so that they will see in me what they should become, and let me not disappoint them. That's my nighttime prayer, right? I say that to you because I screw up every day. So you can't teach courage, you can't teach commitment, you have to show people how that happens, right? He is one of my role models right there. You're about to hear from him. One of the bravest men I've ever known. One of the most decent human beings I've ever known. And the kind of person with whom I love to keep company. Now, showing people how to do things. Remember Dexter the dog? I want you to see Dexter again. Dexter's going to show up, and on the right hand is the screen. And this is a helicopter assault I'm about to join. I'm walking along. This is my helmet camera. I'm walking along with a group of guys that are going to get on the helicopter, and it happens to be the one where Dexter is already there. See Dexter on the right-hand side of the screen? That's Dexter. What are they doing? They're not going, hey, high-fiving each other, thump-chesting. A lance corporal. There's a lieutenant in that shot. There's a staff sergeant in that shot. We're about to be joined by about 10 others, and it's a lance corporal. It says, hey, guys, Dexter and Smitty are coming with us, the only dog on the entire 25 helicopter assault lift. And I'm going with Dexter and Smitty. They kneel down and they pray for them. Now, I dare the ACLU, or whatever they're going to call themselves if this election goes wrong, I don't care what they say. I dare anybody to tell those government employees not to pray on government time. All right, I've been talking a lot about role models. Let me just tell you how I came to conclude I know where I'm going and why I'm going there. 1978, I became the operations officer for Battalion Landing Team 38. On a flight today, I met a guy who was in 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. We used to relieve each other in the Mediterranean. 7 months out, and the other battalion, we'd meet in Rota, we'd exchange all the secret documents and all that stuff and go home. And then we'd come back out again 2 rotations later. He had been a gunnery sergeant on the rotation that replaced us. They were blown up in Beirut, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. So on the way out, my battalion commander, who everybody knew was a genius, he was a West Pointe graduate, I'm an Annapolis graduate. John Grinnells was a Rhodes Scholar, I was not. He went on and got his MBA from Harvard, then became an infantry officer, 2 tours in Vietnam, an American hero, got the medals to show for it. And he was at a desk the other side of me in the Marine headquarters in 1975 to 78. And then he leaned over. He'd just been promoted early to lieutenant colonel. I'd just been promoted early to major. And he said to me, I want you to be my operations officer. And I said, for all the wrong reasons, yes, sir. Because everybody knew he was going to be a general. And if I tied my wagon to his star, I would too. That's why I joined him. Just before we deployed, I fell off the top of an armored vehicle. And he knelt down over top of me in front of the sergeant major and prayed for me, and the pain went away like that. They were about to call a medevac. I'm kind of getting the idea this guy's got some connections I might likely have. Right? At the deployment, 4 o'clock in the morning, Moorhead City. Anybody been a Marine deployed out of the 2nd Marine Division? Moorhead City, North Carolina is where they deploy. From 5 amphibious ships lined up. Behind the chain link fence, all the wives and girlfriends and sweethearts crying because their guy is leaving for 7 months. Little kids, my kids are out there watching. And John Reynolds hands me, in front of the battalion, in front of all the generals and admirals that are down there, for this is an important occasion, hands me a copy of this book and says, on the way across the Atlantic Ocean, read it. You had better come to know your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You try that nowadays? Yeah, the swamp will eat you. The swamp would eat you. The president might pardon you as long as we keep him. I'm sorry. I was a Marine. I could follow orders. I started at Genesis, wondering who the heck is he? I almost quit at Leviticus. And then I got to the first gospel, Matthew's gospel, 8th chapter, verses 5 through 13. And I realized I understand something. What happens in that chapter? Remember? A Roman army infantry officer, I'm an infantry officer, comes down in Capernaum, and Tim and I have been there together, comes down from the top of the hill where the barracks was, because he's the martial law in that town. He comes down and he says to Jesus, who's on the temple steps, and they've unearthed them now. They've exhumed, they know that's where the synagogue was. And Jesus is preaching outside, teaching to a crowd of people gathered around, probably sitting on the steps. And the Roman officer says, excuse me, I've got a sick servant at home, might have been a slave. In Luke's translation of it, in one of the translations, Luke says it was a slave. He says, would you heal him? And Jesus says, sure, come on, let's go. And he says, no, Lord, I'm a person of authority. I understand authority. I can tell someone to come, and they come. I can tell someone else to go, and they go. All you have to do is say the word, and my servant will be healed. And Jesus says, this guy gets it. He's figured it out. Go on home, your servant's healed. And we know this is not one of Ollie North's novels. This is all true. We know in that moment the servant was healed. So, then Jesus, as he's walking back up the hill to find the servant's healed, what happens? He turns to the 12 guys who've worn out their sandals, walking all over Galilee with him, and he says to them about the Roman officer, greater faith than that in all Israel I have not seen. Why does he say that? Very simple. Roman law says if you consort with a traitor, a seditionist, then you are subject to the same sanction. What's the sanction? Crucifixion. He just risked his life to heal his servant. He knows the secret police are making notes about what Jesus is doing and what he's saying and who he's talking to. He knows that, and he still risks his own life. John Reynolds had not risked his life, but John Reynolds risked his career to tell me to read that book and come to know my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I tell you that story because that was in 1978. I was 35 years old. In 1986, 1981, I was assigned to the White House. By 1983, I was the counterterrorism director. By 1986, there were certain people in Congress pretty unhappy with me, and so they invited me, they subpoenaed me. Come up to Capitol Hill, have a chat with them. And so I brought a copy of this book with me. As we're going in the door, a little lady, terrorists threatened my wife and kids on the 11th of February, 1987, 6 months before the hearings, with murder, right? They were coming to our house to kill them because of my job at the White House. And so we were still living with federal security agents, and they clustered around us as we're going into the hearing room that morning, and the little lady, how she got there, the entire hallway was cleared by everybody, and it reaches through the throng of armed agents and armed Capitol Hill police officers and puts a card in my hand, this card. And she says, here, you may need this. Brendan Sullivan, my lawyer, who I talked to just an hour or so before coming over here, took the card and put it in his pocket like this and said, look, don't be reading other stuff. Just read the stuff that they put in front of us and pay attention, okay? All right? So we do. We sit down at the table, and Brendan takes this card out, and he goes like this and props it on the microphone stand. And in all the pictures, you can see it. Up there in the raised dais where the Roman emperor, the members of Congress were, you couldn't see what was on the card. The press behind us couldn't see because our shoulders blocked it. And so the third or fourth day after this hearing has been going on, each time we'd get up to leave, Brennan would grab the card and put it in his pocket, and we'd walk out to go to potty call or lunch or whatever. The swamp breaks a lot. So, poor Kavanaugh. Poor Amy. I mean, what they put her through. But they gave us a few more potty calls. Anyway, on one of them, the security guys didn't get around before one of the reporters grabs Sullivan. He says, as we're walking out there, "What's on the card?" And Sullivan says, "This card." He says, yeah, what's on the card? And Sullivan puts it back without showing. He says, "The answers." If you don't think the Lord is answering prayers, let me tell you different. Because we prayed, Brendan and I and our legal team prayed on our knees before we go in for each return to those hearings. Every night when I would go home, Betsy and I would pray. The kids would already be in bed. Betsy would clip out the headlines from the front page of the Washington Compost before the kids could see it. I'm absolutely certain that the Lord put that little lady, handwritten, told the story 1,000 times. Tim and I have told this story, shown the card to people. I'm telling you these things because I've been to so many funerals, and I revere Arlington, and I've got a reserved spot at Arlington. Betsy and I went out and picked it out when I was battling cancer a while back. We weren't too sure how that was going to turn out, but I'm not worried about it. I knew where I was going and why I was going there. For a while, I thought I knew when. Yeah. So we already picked out the spot. And they ask you, when you're guaranteed a spot, they ask you, what do you want on the back of your gravestone? I said, well, I know that most people put all the battles they were in and all the fights they were in and all the medals that they've got, but I'd rather have something that would benefit my grandkids. At the time, I think we only had 14. Now we got a few more. And what I want on the back is from Paul's second letter to Timothy. Probably his last letter, right, Pastor? Huh? Likely. He's a prisoner of Nero. He's given instructions to Timothy, practical and things. Like, stay away from that tinsmith, because he's not a good guy. And send me a cloak, because it's freezing cold here in this dungeon. And in it, he says what I wanted, a little modification on the back of my gravestone. Paul says to Timothy, remember. He's talking like he knows he's about to die. Remember, I showed you how to fight the good fight. I showed you how to finish the race and how to keep the faith. That's what I want on the back of my gravestone. He showed us how to fight the good fight, how to finish the race, and how to keep the faith. For their benefit, I beg you, if you haven't already voted, do so. If you've already voted the wrong way, call me, I'll take care of it. Oh, yeah. So you want to know what's really on the card. This is the card. I've carried it with me ever since. They that wait, by the way, I've got another card that's got a different verse on it. It's actually the reason why I know where I'm going and why I'm going there. It's Romans 10:9, right? Romans 10:9 is truth just like this. Romans 10:9, everybody remember? If you confess with your lips that Jesus is Lord and you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's why I know. Just don't know when. Here's what reassures me. They that wait, this is right here in front of me the whole time. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not feel faint. Isaiah 40:31. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You may be seated. Wow, what a great evening here in Pensacola, Florida, and celebrating God and country. We don't mind mixing it up at all. And somebody said, well, what about the separation of church and state? Well, you need to read your Constitution. First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Doesn't say a thing about you and I getting involved in government. It says the government should not get involved in the business of the church. Thank you, Pastor Gordon Godfrey, and a lot of churches across America doing the same thing and trying to awaken people and get people to get a burden for their country, and especially tomorrow to get a bunch of you to go out and vote. I saw the hands, and so I'm expecting you to do your job tomorrow. We've already voted in Texas, Connie and I have, and if you're not 100% for sure who to vote for, see me out in the lobby. You'll probably know before I'm finished tonight anyhow, but just in case you have any doubt. Oh, I love Lieutenant Colonel Ollie North. What a great job. Give this guy another, wow. And I've heard him many, many times, but he was on fire tonight. And we've been together a lot, and one of the greatest experiences of my life was going to Israel with him. And people ask me all the time when his name comes up, and his name comes up a lot, and what kind of a guy is he? And I just always tell him he's the real deal. What you saw tonight is what you get on a bus driving down a highway in Israel. He's just the same, and he loves God, loves his family, loves his country, and made a lot of sacrifices for America. And Colonel North, thank you for being a friend. I appreciate you, buddy. Wow. Matter of fact, I only brought one thing with me tonight, and that's our book, Born on the 5th of July, and he wrote the foreword for this book. It is the greatest foreword that's ever been written for any book anywhere. I'm telling you, you got to buy the book just to read the foreword. And this is my story, born on the 5th of July. A lot of things in the book I wouldn't necessarily tell you from the platform, but the most common phrase we've heard over and over and over again, I couldn't put it down. And that's what we wanted. Our mutual friend, Bob Hamer, who was a Marine and served in the Marines, and then 26 years as a field officer in the FBI, was a co-writer with me and has been with Colonel North on many occasions as well. It is an awesome book. All the proceeds of this book goes to our Marine events at MCRD Paris Island. Many of you know about those events. I'm not going to go in detail tonight, but God's opened up the greatest door for our ministry that we've ever been given to go to Paris Island 4 to 5 times a year. On Sunday morning, every 12 to 13 weeks, we have church for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we bring in a worship team and lead in worship and praise for 45 to 50 minutes, and then I give my story. I give a clear, concise presentation of the gospel, and then I give a public invitation for people to come to Christ. Your pastor's been there, and it was the most amazing thing. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands, no exaggeration, have stepped out of their seats with brokenness and tears and conviction and came and gave their hearts to Jesus Christ. It's a God thing. So the books are $20, and then with the book you get a free lapel pin like the one I have. This says, this American flag says, Stand Up for America. That'll be a great pin to wear to vote tomorrow. Stand Up for America. There's like 4 different versions of it on the table. You get a free one. If you want the pins by themselves, they're $10, but with the book, you get a free pin. There's something going on in America, in case you didn't know it, and it's called an election. And tomorrow, I believe, and I know I've said this on other occasions, but I've always meant it whenever I said it, that this is the most important election of my lifetime. And tomorrow, I believe, is the most important election of my lifetime. I believe that. I think that it is, as some have said, this is the most important election since the Civil War. And maybe, I mean, there's a battle going on. There's a lot besides the election. There is a spiritual warfare. I'm going to talk about that a little bit here tonight, because there's more than just voting for a Republican or a Democrat. There is a good versus evil going on in this country right now. And somehow, I'm speaking especially to believers right now, Christians, God's people have to wake up. And as Colonel North talked about his grandchildren, and that is my burden tonight. I care about my generation and my children's generation, but I'm so burdened for my grandchildren. If Jesus tarries his coming and we don't see something good happen in America, especially tomorrow in the election, but then in a spiritual sense in the days ahead, no matter who wins the election, Jesus is still going to be on the throne. He's still going to be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. That's not going to change. You can't kick him off the throne. So I've come to you tonight with a real burden, and I'm going to preach that burden here for about 23 minutes tonight, and I'll be as brief as I can. But I've got this burden that I really want to share with you. I used to preach a message when I first began preaching in evangelism 42 years ago entitled, "America, the Crown Has Fallen," from the book of Lamentations, chapter 5, and verse number 16. He said, "Woe unto us, the crown has fallen from our head." Oftentimes in the Bible, God would deal with entire nations. Does God care about what happens in America? He most certainly does. Proverbs 14 and verse 34, "Righteousness exalteth the nation, but sin is a reproach to any people." The Bible declares in Psalms 9 and verse 17, "The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God." I've often said it would be better for a nation not to know God than to know God and then turn her back on God. In Jeremiah, the prophet is writing concerning the nation of Israel. He reminds her of her past, of her heritage that has been handed down from one generation to another. But now something very tragic has happened. In Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse number 7, he said, "I brought you into a plentiful country. But when you entered it, you defiled my land and made mine heritage an abomination." He said, pastors have transgressed the laws and no longer look to God for approval. It's not bad enough that you turned your back upon God, but now you've gone to serving Baal and false gods. In Lamentations chapter 2 and verse number 4, Jeremiah said, "The kings of the earth and all the inhabitants of the world would not have believed that the adversaries and the enemies should have entered into the gates of Jerusalem. Now, instead of the enemy respecting you, they laugh at you and they wag their heads at you." And in Lamentations chapter 2 and verses 15 and 16, he said, "The prophets, you've taken the inheritance of God and you've given it to the Egyptians and to the Assyrians to be satisfied with bread. You've given it to your enemies." He said, "Princes are hanged up by their hands and the face of elders are no longer honored." And then he summed it all up in the latter part of Lamentations chapter 5 when he said, "There is no more joy and there is no more music and there is no more dancing." And he summed it up in that verse that I quoted a moment ago in chapter 5 and verse 16, "The crown is fallen from our head. Woe unto us, and that we have sinned." America, our nation, our country, has such a great heritage, a great history. We're not very old when you consider the nations of the world. We're a fairly young nation. And you compare that some nations are 1,000 years old and even a lot older than that. But we have one of the greatest histories and one of the greatest heritages that any nation has ever had. It actually goes back beyond the Constitutional Convention and even beyond the Declaration of Independence and even beyond the Pilgrims and the Puritans to a period of nearly 500 years ago with a man by the name of Christopher Christopher Columbus. If your name is Chris or Christopher, your name means Christ bearer, or I carry Christ. You think it was an accident that God had a man by the name of Christopher Columbus to come to this part of the world? Not on your life. America's built more Bible-believing churches than any other nation on the face of the earth. America sent out more Bible-believing missionaries to the rest of the world than any other nation on the face of the earth. And it began with a man by the name of Christopher. He wrote one book. It's called the Book of Prophecy. There's a copy of that book in the British Museum in London. I've been there, saw the original copy. Let me give you a quote from the English translation of his book concerning his discovery of this part of the world. He said, and I quote, "It was the Lord who put in my mind to sail from Spain to the Indies. I could feel his hand upon me. All who heard my project rejected it with laughter and ridicule against me. There is no doubt that my inspiration to sail came from the Holy Ghost of God, because he comforted me with a ray of illumination from the Holy Scriptures, encouraging me to sail on till I found the country." End of quote. You say, well, Tim, what makes that so unusual? Most of the scholars, most of the educators, most of the scientists of Columbus Day believed that the earth was flat. They actually believed that if you went out into the ocean far enough, that you would fall off of the end of the earth. But for some reason, Columbus didn't believe that. You know why? He was a Bible student. And the Bible declares in Isaiah chapter 40 and verse number 22 that the earth is a circle. If the scholars and the educators and the scientists of Columbus Day would have read the Bible and believed the Bible, they would have saved themselves a lot of ignorance. If the scholars and the educators and the scientists of our day would read the Bible and believe the Bible, they too would save themselves a lot of ignorance. Did you know that it's just as ridiculous in 2020 to believe in evolution as it was for them to believe that the earth was flat? Young people, when I went to school, they taught evolution, but they taught it as a theory. It was nothing more than a theory. They don't teach your children today that evolution is a theory. They teach you that evolution is a fact. And what are the facts of evolution? Eons and eons and eons and light years ago, nobody knows when, nobody knows where, nobody knows why, and nobody knows how. And those are the facts. I was a tadpole when I began to begin. Next, I was a frog with my tail tucked in. Then I was a monkey in a coconut tree. And now I'm a man with a PhD. A fella said to me years ago in South Texas, man, it takes a lot of faith for you Christians to believe that stuff in the Bible about creation. Hey, it takes a whole lot more faith to believe in evolution than it does to believe the Word of God. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God. You say, where did God come from? Anywhere he wanted to. He's God. He said, let us make man in our own image. He took out the dust of the earth. He made man. He breathed in his nostrils, and man became a living soul. I don't have any trouble with that. You know why? It's the Word of God. Saw it was not good for man to be alone. Took a rib from Adam's side and made the woman. I have no difficulty with that. It is the Word of God. A lady said to me, well, why didn't God create the woman first? And I told her it was because he didn't want any advice on how to make the man. She got a little bent out of shape. She said, Buster, just where do you men think you'd be at if it wasn't for us women? I told her we'd be back in the Garden of Eden. Just kidding. In the 1620s, the Pilgrims came to America. A decade later came the Puritans. There were no skyscrapers. There were no great big factory buildings. There were no interstate highway systems. Nothing here except two things: a vast wilderness and freedom. And they wanted that freedom. And they were willing to pay the price for that freedom. Many of them died on their way here. And when they arrived, they faced harsh winters and diseases and sickness, and many of them died, but they weren't turning around and going back because they wanted the freedom that this new country had. And they were willing to pay the price. 56 brave men put their names on what we now know as the Declaration of Independence. Our forefathers, they said that they were sacrificing and willing to give their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, all of it. And many of them did die. John Hancock is reported to have signed his name about 3 times larger than the others. And they asked him why. And he said, I understand the king is getting old and he doesn't see as well as he used to see. I don't want there to be no doubt that when that paper goes back across the waters that he knows my name was on it. Those are the kind of men that built America. They had a plan. They began to build a great nation. They were dedicated to the radical proposition that all men were created equal, and they were endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, including life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. They did not say life, liberty, and happiness. They said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How do you pursue happiness? You get a job, you go to work, you sweat a little bit, and you earn a living. Many people in our government want to reward those who don't work and punish the ones who do work. Look at me. I'm 70 years old. I've lost most of my hearing. I have severe arthritis in both of my hips. I've had both of my shoulders reconstructed. And besides that, I stepped on a landmine that blew both of my legs off of my body. But do you know what I'm doing up here tonight? I am pursuing happiness. I love doing what I do. And I encourage you to pursue happiness as well. America was built upon a solid foundation. Other countries built upon communism and socialism, anti-God, sinking sand, and dictators. America was built upon, as the pastor said, the principles and the beliefs of God's word. In other words, gods and guns and guts is what built America. Let me give you a little bit of our history tonight. This is our heritage. Some of you are not going to believe some of this I'm fixing to tell you, but it's the truth. All you got to do is read and find out for yourself. Some of you are not going to believe what I'm fixing to tell you. 1683, the original Rhode Island Charter. We submit, and I quote, we submit our persons, lives, and estates unto our Lord Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, to all those perfect and most absolute laws of his having given us in his holy word, end of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the original charter of one of the original 13 colonies. Our forefathers were not trying to kick God out of America. Our forefathers wanted God in America. How about 1701, the Pennsylvania Charter, written by William Penn, and I quote, All persons who profess to believe in Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, should be capable to serve this government in any capacity, both legislatively and executively. End of quote. They weren't trying to kick God out. They wanted God in America. George Washington, our first president, said it is impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible. That was your very first president. He wasn't trying to kick God out of America. He wanted God in America. Our schools, our education system. In 1836, Noah Webster, often referred to as the father of America's education, said, and I quote, "The purpose of schools was meant for the advancement of the Christian faith." He said, "In my view, the Christian religion is the most important and one of the first things in which all children under a free government ought to be instructed. No truth is more evident to my mind than that the Christian religion must be the basis of any government intended to secure the rights and the privileges of free people." End of quote. That was Noah Webster. And then comes along John Dewey. John Dewey is known as the architect of modern education. He said, and I quote, "There is no God and there is no soul. Hence, there are no needs for the props of traditional religion. Those props have been knocked away and moral standards have been disbanded. And thus we're given epidemics of teen pregnancies, abortion, drugs, alcohol, suicide, and violence." Speaking of evolution, I tell people all the time, if you teach your young people long enough that they come from animals, then don't be surprised after a while, then they begin to act like animals. Who would ever believe that we would see so much violence among our young people in America? They're boarding up windows and storefronts in anticipation that they're going to run wild and destroy and tear apart. You know what I say? I say let's kick John Dewey out of school and let's put Noah Webster back in school. Most of America's oldest universities were started by preachers in churches. Some of you are not going to believe this, but it's the truth. What kind of universities are you talking about? Well, you'll recognize some of them. Harvard, William and Mary, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Rutgers, Dartmouth. Every single one of those that I just named were started by preachers and church affiliation. They weren't trying to kick God out. They wanted God in. Harvard's original seal, which can still be seen today. Now, you may want to hurry to go see it because of this cancel culture that we have today, trying to undo our history and throw out our history, destroy it. But Harvard's original seal in Latin says truth for Christ and the church. End of quote. Truth for Christ and the church. That was Harvard's original seal. They weren't trying to kick God out. How about Yale? 1701, with a stated goal, and I quote, "that every student shall consider the main end of his study, to wit, to know God in Jesus Christ." Wow. That was Yale. In 1701, how far have we come trying to kick God out of everything in America? If you ask me tonight, and I'm going to shock some of you, which branch of government that I am most concerned about, I am concerned about who's in the White House. And I believe that there is an easy choice. A man came up to me yesterday after I preached in Fort Worth, Texas, and he said, I told him what I just told you, that if you're not for sure who to vote for, see me out in the foyer. He took me up on it. He was very serious. Hispanic a young man. His wife was back in the counseling room. His wife had just given her heart to Christ. He was already saved, but he came back to talk to me. He said, I'm really serious. He said, I'm not for sure who to vote for. I said, well, I'm going to help you. And I said, I'm being serious. The most important issue with Christians is the issue of life. And I said, if a politician is wrong on this issue, then most likely they're going to be wrong on nearly every other issue. And we have today two separate candidates. One of them is the most pro-life president that we've ever had in this country. Ever. And the other believes on abortion right up to the point of birth. And there are even others, such as the governor of Virginia, who advocates murder after the baby's been born. Set it aside and we'll talk to the mother. We'll have a discussion to decide what to do. How wicked and how evil. This ought to stir you up. This ought to have some righteous indignation, and people stand up and say enough is enough. That little baby can't speak in a mother's womb. We have to speak for that child. Let me close this evening and talk a little bit about America's heritage one more time. And then I'm going to wrap this up. One of the greatest vacations that our family ever took, my kids will tell you this, they were young. We've been to Disney World, we've been to Disneyland, been to Knott's Berry Farm, we've been to Six Flags, been to all of the entertainments, but when President Reagan was president, I attended the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in D.C. and was invited to the prayer breakfast. And they seated me at the head table. Don't ask me how I got to the head table, but I was seated by a lady by the name of Carolyn Sunseth. She was President Reagan's religious liaison, and she was a very happy lady and just so cheerful and excited. She was telling me what she did and job. And then she handed me her card and she said, if ever you come here with your family, let me know and I'll get you a personal tour of the White House after ours. Not one that you go through your congressman to get tickets and wait in line with everybody else. And sure enough, we went to D.C. and she got us a tour. We went to the White House after ours. It was so amazing. But that week we spent in our nation's capital. And we didn't ride any rides, well, unless you count a taxi cab. We rode taxi cabs. That was pretty exciting. But all over our nation's capital. Now you better hurry. You will find references to God. You will find references to the Bible, etched in stone, etched in marble. The Washington Monument, which a few months ago they just had redone and reopened to the public, engraved on the aluminum capstone at the very top, the highest point of our nation's capital, is a Latin phrase, Laus Deo, which means praise be to God. They were not talking about Muhammad or Buddha. They were talking about the God of this Bible. Lining the walls of the Washington Monument are carved tribute blocks that declare such biblical phrases as, and I quote, holiness to the Lord. We've been there. We've seen them engraved into the Washington Monument. Also, another one, quote, search the scriptures. Another one, the memory of the just is blessed. How about this one? train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. It's engraved, Proverbs 22:6, in the Washington Monument. You better hurry. I'm sure some people have not realized it yet, and if they had, they would already have tried to have done away with it. And then our Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, we were given a special tour, and in the House chamber is the inscription, "In God We Trust." Also in the House chamber, above the gallery doors, stands a marble relief of Moses surrounded by 22 other lawgivers. At the east entrance to the Senate chamber are the words "Annuited Copitis," which is Latin for, quote, "He has favored our undertakings." The words "In God We Trust" are also written on the southern entrance. In the rotunda is the painting of the baptism of Pocahontas. I'm not talking about Elizabeth Warren, I'm talking about Pocahontas. And also the embarkation of the pilgrims that shows the pilgrims praying on shipboard, led by William Brewster. Clearly seen in an open Bible are the words, "The New Testament according to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ." It's in your nation's capital. You better hurry. The words "God with us" are inscribed on the sail of the ship. In the Capitol's chapel, which we were given a special tour and a few moments in that special place, is a stained glass window depicting George Washington in prayer under the inscription, "This nation under God." Also, the prayer from Psalm 16:1 is etched in the window, which states, "Preserve me, God, for in thee do I put my trust." I think I started to tell you which branch of government I'm most concerned about. I am concerned about the executive branch. I am concerned about the legislative branch. And you need to be making sure who you're voting for our House of Representatives and our Senate. But I'm more concerned about the judicial branch of our government. For it is the judges of America who for the last 50 plus years who have repeatedly said to God, "We don't need you anymore." Now, we needed God in the birth of our nation. We needed God in our infancy. We needed God in our teen years, in our early years. But all of a sudden, we've grown up so much and we've gotten so big that we don't need God anymore. We need God. We desperately need God. We urgently need God. Now, thankfully, we have a president that has had the privilege to put 3 Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court. But you know what? None of it was really a surprise. You know why? Because he told us in advance who the candidates were that he would choose from to be on the Supreme Court. I wonder why the other candidate hasn't told us who his judges will be. I'm going to tell you why. Because the candidates, the judges from the other side, I'm telling you, this is a difference between good and evil, are wanting God out. They don't want, listen folks, our churches are under attack. Churches in California are being fined $5,000, $10,000 for a single service. And if you don't think it will happen where you at, then let us see what happens when we continue to kick God out of America. It will happen in Florida. It will happen in Texas. It will happen everywhere unless we take a stand. We have to draw a line in the sand and say enough is enough. Hey, I'm not asking you to give 2 legs for your country. I'm not asking you to do that. But I am asking you to go vote. I don't think that's me asking too much. To go stand in line. Some of you waited to the last minute, that's fine. Some of you choose to vote on election day, that's great. And maybe all of America ought to do that. Because I'm afraid maybe there's corruption and chances for cheating. I said it. So, You got to vote. But you got to also understand, people, that no political party is going to save America. I believe you ought to be registered to vote. I believe you ought to vote. Don't tell me how much you love America if you won't vote. I don't want to hear it. But that's not where our hope is at. Our hope is not in man. Our hope is in God. Our hope is in Jesus. Our hope is in the Word of God. This is our hope. It's where we put our faith and our trust in is God. Man at best is still man. And man will let you down. But God will never let you down. Perhaps there are those tonight that came to this God and Country event with a family friend or a family member or a friend, and maybe tonight you don't know Jesus. Our first speaker spoke so well and told about what happened to him when he was 35 years of age. If you're here tonight without Christ, I am far more concerned about where you will spend eternity than I am concerned about who you will vote for. Here's what I want you to understand before I have you bow your heads. You got to understand this, and I'm going to make it real easy and real simple. God loves you. God loves you so much that he gave his only son to die for you. A little over 2,000 years ago, God's only son walked up Calvary's hill, willingly laid down his life for your sins and my sins and the sins of the whole world. He hung on a cross, suspended between heaven and earth, and on that cross, he shed his blood, and on that cross, he died. God's only son died. They took him off of that cross, and they carried him, and they put him in a borrowed tomb. We've been there. Here's what separates Christianity from all the other religions on the face of the earth. 3 days later, he bodily, physically gets up from the grave, victorious over sin, victorious over death, victorious over hell, and tonight, God's Son is alive. He's alive. Jesus is alive. That's the good news. Now here is the great news. He wants to come and live in your life. You say, Tim, how does that happen? How does God's Son come and live in my life? You come to this place, not this building, this geographical location in Pensacola, Florida, but this moment, this time, this place in your life right now. To understand in the sight of this holy and righteous God that you're a sinner. The Bible says so. We've all sinned and come short of God's glory. It's our sin that separates us from God. It's our sin that keeps us from having a right relationship with God, and it is our sin that would separate us from God for all eternity in a horrible place called hell, except for the fact that a price was paid for our sins, God's only Son. And tonight, if you're willing to repent of your sin, what's that mean? It means you turn from your sin and you turn to Jesus. And you, by faith, accept what he did for you on that cross. When he shed his blood and when he died that death. And then you, by faith, say yes to Jesus, that he got up from that grave bodily, physically, and wants to come and live in your life. The moment you, by faith, say yes, you become God's child forever. Would you bow your heads for a moment? I'm going to ask that no one leave, no one talk to anyone, no one disturb anyone. We're not going to have what we would call a Sunday morning invitation night, but I am going to give you an opportunity to say yes to Christ. If you've never done that, If you've never been born again, I'm not asking you if you're a member of a church. I'm not asking you if you're a Baptist or a Methodist or a Lutheran or Church of Christ, Catholic. I'm asking you, have you been saved? Have you been born again? Has your life been changed by the power of God? In a moment, I'm going to pray out loud just like I did yesterday in Fort Worth. What we oftentimes refer to as a sinner's prayer. It's a prayer similar to what we prayed when we invited Jesus into our life. And friend, if you want to be saved tonight and you're serious as you know how to be, when I pray this prayer out loud, I want you to pray it in your heart. Understand that the prayer itself doesn't save you. It's not repeating religious words. But you're coming to this place in your life to confess that you're a sinner, and knowing you cannot save yourself, you're turning to Jesus. So here it is. If you're serious and you mean business with God, it doesn't have to be these exact words, but something like this. Dear God, I know I'm a sinner, and I know my sins can separate me from you forever. But tonight, I want to be saved. God, please forgive me of all my sin. Wash me as white as snow. Make me your child. Right now, this very moment, I am trusting Jesus Christ and him alone as my personal Savior. Take me to heaven when I die, for I am now your child. Our heads are still bowed. No one's looking, not here to embarrass anyone or to intimidate anyone. But if you just now prayed that prayer in your heart, when I prayed it out loud, Tim, when you prayed that prayer out loud, I prayed it in my heart, and I meant it with my whole heart as best I knew how. No one else looking. Tim, I prayed that prayer with you tonight. Let me see your hands. Hold them up high. Hold them up high. Hold them up high. There are numbers of hands raised. You can take them down. I didn't take the time to count them all, but there were a great number of hands raised. Church, if you're happy for these, I'm guessing 20 to 25 who said yes to Christ tonight. Would you give them a great big hand and tell them you're happy for them? Wow. Now, if I was here on Sunday morning, we would have had you come forward and pray with you. We'd had counselors and workers to help you and understand what you did. But tonight is a little bit different of an event, so we're going to do it a little different. On that piece of paper that you were handed out tonight, down at the bottom is a connection card. I want you to do something for me. I want you to put your name, your address, your phone number, and email if you have it. And then I want you to write one word. There is a box that you can mark that says accepting Christ as my Savior. You can do that if you want to, but I want you to do something for me. I want you to write the word saved. Colonel North quoted that verse a little while ago. And this verse, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. I love that word. And you write the word saved, S-A-V-E-D. And then pastor will tell you what you can do with those connect cards, maybe leave them in your seat, or he'll tell you what else you can do with them. You say, Tim, is this important? It's vital. The only way we know how to pray for you and encourage you and to help you get started in your Christian life. I want to thank you for letting me be here tonight. This has been a great evening. These young people from the University of Mobile did such a great job. Colonel North did such a great. Thank you, Pastor, for letting me come and be a part of this. God bless you so much. Awesome, awesome.